And just like that, after years of questionable activity, Capcom is back in our good books. Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, I hear Mega Man fans and Monster Hunter fans are pleased enough with the new offerings there. Capcom just needs to make a fighting game that doesn't annoy people again, and all might be forgiven. But for every Capcom IP that makes a return, countless more linger in obscurity, never to see the light of day again. You may think this would be a segue into some pansy shit like God Hand or Beautiful Joe. I mean, who wouldn't make a video on those obscure, in quotes, games for the easy clout? True legends go way deeper than that. Way below your Okamis in terms of obscurity, even below your Haunting Grounds or your Japan-only dating sims like Quiz Ninario Dreams that eventually do go on to make a cameo in fighting games years later. Below even those, you have Capcom's Glass Rose for PlayStation 2. Glass Rose is most relevant to the history of Japanese puzzle adventure game developer Sing, who worked on the game alongside Capcom. Sing went bankrupt in 2010, and it's not entirely hard to see why, at least in the West, this studio failed to capture a consistent audience. You may be aware of their DS games Another Code, aka Trace Memory, and Hotel Dusk, but if you're from North America, you may not be aware that both of these games actually received sequels only released in Japan and Europe. Meanwhile, some of their other titles have the opposite issue, only launching in Japan and America. This is why you may not have heard of Glass Rose, because much like Another Code R and Hotel Dusk 2, it only launched in Japan and Europe. I'm not too sure where the Sing begins and the Capcom ends with this one, but one thing is for certain. There is no way I would have given this game a second look if it wasn't for the amazing cover art by legendary video game artist Shinkiro, known best for his amazing Capcom and SNK artwork. Nothing makes a game look more like a hidden gem than a moody-looking ensemble cast drawn by Shinkiro with the Capcom logo peeking out. But is Glass Rose hidden Cap God material? Well, don't get your hopes up too high. I may have to break this one to you softly. At first, I really had high hopes for Glass Rose. The back of the box talks about solving a murder in a mansion in 1920s Japan, and I thought, awesome. Immersing myself in a time and culture that foreign to me in an interactive form, that's all I really would have needed to be interested. But things are a little more complicated than that. Some might say, slightly too much more complicated. So you play Takashi, a reporter who was teleported back in time from present day when investigating this unsolved decades-old murder case with his friend. In the past, everyone mistakes him for Kazuya, the illegitimate son of the recently dead, under suspicious circumstances, reclusive patriarch of this affluent Japanese family. Also, his friend gets trapped between dimensions or something, and to save her he needs to find these broken heart fragments, but only the good fragments and not the bad fragments, but also he can read minds, but this will drain his power meter energy, which he can recharge by finding the secret magic butterflies. Okay. Throughout most of the game, I was kind of wondering what the point of all this extraneous fantasy material was, while late-game plot twists end up trying to justify the mistaken identity stuff. It kind of felt like how compelling our protagonist could have been kept getting undercut by him lacking any emotional or social stakes in the people and time he interacts with. I guess the idea was to create more of a self-insert character with not much personality we could project ourselves onto as future men ourselves. We are the video game. But I would have much preferred someone with a little more charisma to be spending my time with. On the bright side, unlike the time travel, which really doesn't play that much into the gameplay, the mind reading is rather enjoyable. It's cool to click on a character and see what they actually think of you. I wish I could do that in real life. Which brings us to the big gimmick of this game, the conversation system. Highlight words to dig deep and question suspicious topics. Use brain blasts on a word when they're not telling you the full story. It's a neat idea, and for a while it remains as such. Unfortunately, the system is implemented in a pretty boring way for a detective game. You don't really interrogate people to find out an interesting clue and use that knowledge to solve a puzzle off in the mansion, because there really are no puzzles off in the mansion. The conversation system is basically at least over 90% of this game. Let me explain. The problem Glass Rose has is that you're not really set loose in the world like in a traditional point and click to find items and solve environmental puzzles. Rather, story progression is completely dependent on you finding an NPC and triggering the right responses so an item or another NPC will appear elsewhere. The items usually being something that triggers an NPC to appear somewhere to talk to, or on rare occasions, they unlock a door to find another item that probably triggers an NPC to appear somewhere to talk to. This happens in a pretty linear succession too. You can rarely multitask mysteries through the game world. It's all about finding an NPC and making sure they tell you to get lost, so you know for certain you've triggered everything in the conversation and something else is now doable elsewhere, usually that thing being talking to another NPC. This is especially aggravating when, say, you have no idea where the new point of interest has popped up though. So you're left wandering aimlessly for another character to talk to, or God help you, an obscure part of the environment to click on to get an item. Irritation compounded by the fact that Glass Rose is a point and click on a time limit. You can't even take your time. Let an in-game hour pass without enough progress and you'll lose health or risk dying if you already have none remaining when said hour has passed. Not really explained all that well why this happens, something to do with the time travel, but if Takashi is being driven crazy and dying in frustration at how nonsensical progression can get, I sympathize. Enjoy wacky moments like talking to this old man so he drops a towel that... God damn it, I'm trying to pick up the towel, just pick up the towel that once collected makes this bottle appear elsewhere. The bottle only appears if you have the towel, and then when the bottle is collected, of course, an NPC will appear somewhere for you to talk to. Bravo. Anyone else seeing how these events correlate? Because I don't really feel like much of a detective here. By all this, I mean to say it's hard to treat things like an investigation. Rather than creating a game where you gather clues to solve puzzles, it's just about triggering a bunch of story checkpoints you have to stumble into at times. Sometimes where you should go next is hinted at, but other times it just feels like you have to wander the mansion aimlessly and hope for the best. The game occasionally smatters some reminders up in your journal, but even though they are displayed here in a way to imply they should be done in the current hour, sometimes you can't do them in the current hour because completely unrelated events have to be stumbled into and taken care of first. I feel like I need to shout out PowerPack from GameFAQs.com, because I had to consult their walkthrough a few times, and they're literally the only person to have written one. This is gonna sound a bit crazy for hardcore Charlie, earn that shit yourself to tell you, but I actually might recommend playing on easy for this one. The game highlights features in the environment that are relevant to the story in this mode, and that will probably save you a lot of headaches. Though this mode pretty much does ruin the conversation system by telling you which words to go for. The former feature without the latter is the middle ground I think this game would have been best suited for, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. Neither did I really get the in-depth historical period piece I was looking for here. One, as far as I can see, there isn't even the basic option for Japanese voice acting, which really takes me out of things.
So, you like puzzles, huh?
How come this game was only localized in Europe and the voice actors are American? Like, why does the gaming Brit have to play a game about Japanese people with American accents? 'Tis quite unsatisfactory. Second off, the game is far more interested in the soap opera of its 20+ characters and their intertwined backstories to spend that much time delving into the possibilities of this setting. I feel like the story could have taken place in a Western mansion setting for all it really mattered, even maybe in present day with a few changes. Our future boy Takashi doesn't really bring all that much to the table by being from the future. He might as well have been a psychic from off the street in 1920s Japan, for all being a time traveler actually played into his interactions or problem solving. Maybe Takashi could have applied some knowledge of the murder cases from the future to figure things out in the past, but no, even when he meets the one young version of a detective guy he has a tangential connection to in the present, this opportunity is never really touched upon. You could have had these two sleuths team up with knowledge of the past and present to solve the murders, but alas, it doesn't happen. So Glass Rose on the whole seemed to be shaping up to be a disappointment. And it was, but at the same time, much like in a bouncer kind of way, even though there are glaring issues and easy to make fun of goofs, I just can't help but find the game kinda likable and endearing. I know, my bias towards this era of gaming shines through again, but I can't help but appreciate the quirky artistry here. The game, when it's not being aggravating, has this really mellow atmosphere to it. Its dreamy pre-rendered backgrounds and soft, delicate music put you in a mood for solving stuff. Pretty sure there are only like 5 tracks in the whole game, and there probably should have been a few more for the conversation trees at least. When you're using the same theme for the first conversation and the final one, which is supposed to be far more intense, then, the tone gets a bit undermined by such musical frugality. But when it's good, it works. There's lonely parts of this mansion that feel a little spooky to be walking around. There's some good eeriness in this one when you know a killer is out there. The detailed environments let you basically examine everything and really soak up the little details. You can chill out and play the game one-handed, either on a controller or with a USB mouse. Yeah, a generic USB mouse just plugs right in and lets you actually point and click in this point-and-click game. An obvious but kind of surprising inclusion for a PS2 title. And for a game only localized outside of Japan in the PAL region, boy was I surprised but happy to see they bothered to include a 60Hz NTSC option. Usually, we don't get so lucky with Japan-Europe exclusive PS2 games. Glass Rose is a slow-paced affair to say the least, for a very specific gamer palette, and I'm sure things could have been made significantly unplayable if it had to be played at 50Hz speed. To be fair to the gameplay, there are a few ways to get around being stuck. You can go play this neat little puzzle, and get a hint, so, that's kind of a cute inclusion, right? Despite the pretty nothing protagonist, the cast overall is diverse in terms of their personalities, and even though you'll have to put up with a slow pace to get there, piecing together their backstories is satisfying and compelling enough, with additional materials, fleshing things out even more for those really caught up in things, looking for maximum details on all these different players. And come on, if you're playing an obscure game like this, you're kinda here for the goofs as well, right?
Never mind. I'll go look for him myself.
Yeah, see you later.
The reason I called in Katagiri was because you, Kazuya Nanase, we're here at the mansion.
Okay, he just said he sent for backup because of me and how dodgy I seem. Yeah, let's just casually turn 180 degrees and walk out the room. Yeah, play it smooth. Don't act suspicious or anything. Takashi has a habit of doing this quite a bit, actually, just as a conversation is getting interesting.
I wonder why you're so kind to me.
Ayako.
He'll comedy slow turn and bounce.
Poor Hideo.
Yeah, whatever, kid. I don't know if Glass Rose has ever been referenced again by Capcom. Takashi himself is apparently modeled on a Japanese musician and actor, and as we know, reusing famous likenesses in games without permission can get a bit dicey. On the other hand, maybe they just don't care to mention Glass Rose again because not many people do. If Glass Rose was on Steam for like a $5, I could probably get away with recommending it to enthusiasts, for its experimental mechanics and cool mood. But for 30 plus quid at resale and considerably more if you're importing to North America with a European PS2 to play it on as well, it's not really something I'd say you should hunt down unless you're really into Capcom, Sing, or this era. Basically only do it if you're a big freak for PS2 experiments like I am. Or you just want to own that box art and look cool to your friends, We don't need to put the game on or anything, guys, they won't know what it's actually like to play. Catch you next time.